Jerona here, online coach. Today's video, we're going to discuss 5 questions all about training and nutrition. So we're going to go over these 5 main topics, pretty much going around when to cut, when to stop cutting, the best way to train to gain muscle, and the specific rest periods you want to have for maximum muscle gain, and what is the best way to track progress. So these are the questions for this week. First question was actually inspired by a previous client of mine, Christian. He asked me this a few days ago. All these questions are from the previous week, so if you guys do have any questions, you can feel free to just DM me or email me. You can email me at advphysique@gmail.com if you have any questions, and that's how I'll answer those questions. So we're going to do a weekly live video just like this, answering any topic. Today's going to be specifically around all about training and nutrition for muscle gain, or how to preserve muscle for talking about fat loss. So we're going to dive right into the questions here. Starting off, when to cut. So Christian pretty much asked me when is the best time to know when you should be entering a fat loss phase. His goal is to be gaining muscle, so he's been in a surplus gaining muscle for 2 years now, and he wants to know when is a good time to pull back and actually initiate a fat loss phase to strip some fat on and continue bulking. He doesn't feel the need to really compete or get to really low levels of body fat, so he's totally comfortable with his current body composition, but wants to know when should you actually do a fat loss phase. And great question. So when you should do a fat loss phase, you're going to be due for a fat loss phase every year, I would say. Each year you should be entering a caloric deficit if you've been in a surplus for a few reasons. One main reason is to actually resensitize your body to nutrients. When you're in a caloric surplus for a year straight or a prolonged period of time, your body gets desensitized to the nutrients and it doesn't respond as well and digest and assimilate those nutrients properly. So you're gonna start seeing that you won't be gaining strength as quickly as possible. You are also gonna be seeing that your hunger is gonna be too low. You won't be hungry enough to get enough calories in. You won't be getting as great at pumps. So you kind of want to use a fat loss phase as a resensitization phase at least every year. So like an 8 to 10 week cut to drop some body fat, resensitize yourself, and then go back into that surplus. So that's a great question, guys. When to cut. If you don't have any specific reason to cut, it's still good to enter a fat loss phase in a caloric deficit at least once a year. Typically, I would even say every 6 months, just to keep your body more used to having to deal with less calories, so it can be more fresh and actually utilize those nutrients effectively. So that's that question down. When to cut. Next up, when do you stop cutting? So this question was actually by Adam. So Adam asked me this question a couple days ago. He asked on Instagram. He said, when should you actually stop cutting? So good time to when to stop cutting. Obviously, it's going to be completely personalized. So it all depends on when you reach your goal. So you're going to be cutting until you're satisfied with your current physique. Now, most of us won't be ever really satisfied with where we're at, but there comes a point in time you're going to want to cut when your gym performance really starts to suffer. So there comes a time when you get to a really low level body fat percentage, typically around like 7% body fat. When you get around there, your performance is going to drop real quick, start suffering. That's a perfect time, and that's also when you're not even healthy. So you don't want to get pretty much below that. If you're going to do that, obviously if you're competing, you're going to get to that level. You want to get to that level, and then you want to get bounced back, get up to that at least 10% body fat. That's a healthy range. So when to stop cutting, would say if you're not competing, don't really go below 8%. You want to stop around 10% body fat. That would be when you're healthiest if you're a male. If you're a female, then you can stop cutting around 17%. These numbers are obviously still kind of arbitrary because it depends on how you actually hold and how you look with that specific body fat percentage. And there's so many different ways to actually record your body fat percentage that could be thrown off by a couple percent at least. So I don't like to go off of body fat percentage, but a good time is based off feeling your hormones, get blood work done, see where your hormones are at. If you're seeing your testosterone is really starting to drop, your sex drive is really starting to drop off if you're a male, and you're noticing that your performance is suffering, great time to stop cutting. You could reverse diet from there or try to hold that condition for a few weeks. Again, don't want to drop too low of a percent of body fat. If you do, you can't maintain it. Competing in any bodybuilding or physique competition isn't sustainable. So you're going to get to that condition for a week or so, and you want to get back up to 10% if you're a male. So that's when you want to stop cutting. It's going to come down to you, your personal preference and goals. But again, don't want to drop below 10%. Next up, best way to train to gain muscle. James asked me this question on Facebook. James asked this question on Facebook. He's asking, what's the best way to train to gain the most amount of muscle the fastest? And that's going to be a huge emphasis on progressive overload. The majority of your training should be pretty much in that 5 to 10 up to 12 rep range. 5 to 12, I would say. You want to get stronger around that rep range, and you want to be doing more volume progressively on a week-to-week basis. So what I like to do is ensure that I'm getting more volume in the next week is just adding 1 rep on an exercise. So this week, if you did the bench press for 185 pounds and you got 3 sets of 6, then next week you want to try getting 3 sets of 7. Something as simple as that. It's such a 1 more rep. That's progressive overload. Progressive overload is essentially when you're doing more the next week or the next month or the next period compared to what you've previously been doing. So the best way to gain muscle, make sure that you're progressive overloading. That can be in terms of reps. That can be in terms of weight. That can even be in terms of rest period. If you rest 15 seconds shorter but did the same amount of volume as you did last week, then that's progressive overload. So it's a different stimulus. Multiple ways to progressively overload. I can go into a full video on YouTube. I can make a full YouTube video just on progressive overload alone and all the different tactics. I actually have 2 different YouTube videos on progressive overload, showing one on a perfect chart. You guys can check that if you like. You just search Anthony Pietrobono, and you guys on YouTube search Anthony Pietrobono progressive overload, and you'll have a nice detailed video on that. That's pretty much the basic there. You don't want the majority of your training to be the fluff work. Fluff work, I mean pump training. You want to train for the pump definitely at the end of your sessions. You can do those higher rep ranges, that really low rest period. But majority of your training definitely want to be in that 5 to 12 rep range. Just structuring to make sure you get that progressive overload in. Using majority compound movements, you get the most bang for your buck with the compound movements. Of course, isolation movements have their place, especially if you're trying to bring up lagging muscle groups, but that's a topic for another video. So that's the best way to train right there. Knocking that off. Next up, we got rest period. So what is, Julie asked how long she should be resting in between her sets for the most amount of muscle gain. And for those of you just coming in the live stream on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, we were talking about 5 main questions that I got last week from viewers, some subscribers or followers on different social media platforms, all about either muscle gain or fat loss. They were asking questions. I took the 5 best questions, the 5 questions I thought I could answer the best, and that's what we're doing right here. So we got 2 questions left for this week. If you guys have any questions, you want your questions answered, just drop them in the comments. I'll go through the comments after the videos, and I will record them, and I'll make sure that they get answered in the next week. So if you have any questions on training, nutrition, or supplementation for muscle gain or fat loss, drop them in, and we'll go from there. So next up, Julie was asking, what's the best rest periods for the most amount of muscle gain?